Let us talk some hockey here on the program. Stefano, what do you got for us?
All right, well, we touched on the Washington Capitals before, how they've really bounced back after a tough start to the season, and they've really gotten to the point where everyone thought they would be at this point of the season, and they look like they're about to win the Southeast Division. But we did talk about Winnipeg falling off the charts, but could we see perhaps a Winnipeg one last push towards the playoffs with about 8 games left in their season?
You know, I don't see it for 2 reasons. One, they don't have the goal scoring, and 2, their schedule with travel is just brutal, as we mentioned. We're just weighing on them all year, having to play teams in the Southeast when you're all the way in Manitoba. Just not really fair to them. Think about the fact that we didn't play Western Conference teams this year, so they couldn't play closer teams like Edmonton, Calgary, Minnesota all year and really save themselves a bit of travel. So they'll get a reprieve next year, but this has been brutal for them, and I just don't think that they're going to have enough gas left in the tank.
All right, one team that's not going to be in the playoffs, the Calgary Flames, and with all the moves they made this year, rebuild mode looks to be perfectly set for the next few years. I mean, trading away Jerome McGinley and Jay Bouwmeester, and plus Kiprusoff will be retiring at the end of the season. But the question is, should Jay Feaster be the one to lead this rebuild, considering all the mistakes he's made, or should the Calgary Flames do what the Montreal Canadiens did and go in a different direction and go that direction for a rebuild?
There's only so much equity that a general manager can rely on in terms of his career and CV, and certainly Feaster put together the 2004 Tampa Bay Lightning. They won a Stanley Cup. The Flames loved it so much, losing to them in 2004, they ended up hiring Feaster a few years later to be their GM. But what have you done for me lately? And the Flames have flamed out over the last few years. Even when they made the postseason, it was terrible. So, yeah, I would have to start fresh. But from what we're hearing from experts out there, it's not the problem of the general manager. He's more of a puppet figure right now. It's the problem of the president. And that's the problem right now in Calgary, is things are kind of handed down from the owner and the president to the general manager. And until that's changed, there's really not anything that's going to be substantially different in Calgary.
All right, we touched on the San Jose Sharks before, and obviously winning 7 in a row, even after trading Ryan Clough this week, or this past week now. They have really started to come on and look like the contenders that they were a couple of years ago. And we've said they have been overlooked. Are they a legit threat in the West?
Here's the problem. Right now, if the playoffs started today, San Jose would play LA. Crap for them, right? You got to go up against the Stanley Cup champs right away. But the Sharks are for real. Yeah, absolutely. We've talked about this on this show a couple of times. They've made some interesting tweaks over the last few weeks. They added Matt Irwin, an undrafted defenseman who's really helped them on their power play, and it's also enabled them to put an underachieving, often injured Brent Burns up at forward. And now you have a 6'5" forward with an incredible slap shot. We remember him in those All-Star game. I think he had over 95 mile an hour slap shot. So you have this guy playing the wing and as a forward, but you still have him on the point on the power play. And it's really changed the dynamic of the San Jose Sharks. Burns is, I'm not sure the exact stats right now, but something like 8 points in 11 games or 9 points in 12 games or something like that. It's really helped the San Jose Sharks round themselves out. You know, they have a ton of talent there, and it's a question of whether Marleau and Thornton have one more year left in them here, one more playoff run to prove to everyone that they can do it in the postseason. But you have the youth as well, Couture and Pavelski. And we mentioned Irwin, but also the veterans too. We mentioned those veterans, but guys like Dan Boyle who still have it on the defensive end. I think this is a talented, dangerous team, but if the matchup in the first round is the LA Kings, no, I don't think they're going anywhere. If they could somehow avoid the Kings, if the Ducks have a collapse and the Kings win the division, or if the Sharks slide down to number 6 and don't have to play the Kings in the first round, then yeah, I think the Sharks can get by the first round.
All right, this team's been in the news for off-ice issues, but the Phoenix Coyotes, right now on the ice, they're doing pretty well. I mean, only 3 points behind Detroit in the 8th and final playoff spot. They have a game in hand on the Red Wings, and the Red Wings just lost today to the Blues, and the Coyotes have reeled off 3 straight wins, and Mike Smith is back in the lineup. So, I mean, this team went to the conference finals last year, and one of the teams they beat along the way, the Chicago Blackhawks. So if they were to reach the 8th seed, could they actually pull off an upset in the first round?
I think they're certainly capable of pushing the Blackhawks or any other team in the NHL because they have Dave Tippett. And they lost Ray Whitney in the offseason, and you thought, well, you know, maybe that's the guy that was stirring the drink on the power play and the veteran presence they were all playing for. But they went out and they got Steve Sullivan. That helped them for a while. Recently, he was moved out to New Jersey. And what's happened? They've won 3 games in a row. They lost Mike Smith. He was out for a while, as you mentioned, Stefano, and they had a combination of Jason LaBarbera, Chad Johnson, and an unheralded goalie. But last night, Smith came back, a 4-0 shutout, albeit against Colorado, but they get a shutout from Smith. Mike Smith last year showed the ability to put this team on his back, be a Vezina caliber goaltender. He's playing for a contract, I believe, as well, and this is going to be a very interesting case down the stretch in the Western Conference. I think that Phoenix does get in based on the strong coaching, the fact that Keith Yandel is still on that team. He didn't get moved out. And I'll throw in a couple of other names that are starting to make a difference here down the stretch for them. Radim Verbata missed basically half the year this year. He had a 3-assist game the other night. He had another point last night. I think that a 35-goal scorer last year in Verbata is going to help lead the way down the stretch. And they have a guy from the minors, a physical guy, 6'2", that they called up that's getting points here and there, named Rob Klinkhammer. That's right, Rob Klinkhammer, and he's getting it done for them. So yeah, I think absolutely Phoenix could get in, and the problem right now is that the Red Wings, or at least for the Red Wings, they're just not getting enough consistent play on the defensive end. Now the rookie Damian Brunner is hurt, and he hadn't been scoring anyway. Yeah, I think Phoenix could get in.
All right, a team we've talked about as making a late push for the playoffs has been the Philadelphia Flyers, and obviously they were on a great run until yesterday when they lost 4-1 to Winnipeg, but they just can't seem to get the goaltending, though. And Ilya Bryzgalov, it seems they have to score 5 goals every game to win. So with that in mind, could they actually pull this off with all their firepower, or is their lack of goaltending just going to come back to haunt them?
Oh, yeah. I mean, you just answered your own question there. It's the Flyers. It's always about the goaltending. It's never a good situation there. I mean, they obviously miss Chris Pronger, who didn't play a game this year, and the defense isn't what it used to be. They used to have so many bone crunchers on defense that would just intimidate the heck out of the opponents, and they don't have that this year. You know, they have a hodgepodge back there, and certainly Timonen is the best of what they have, but, you know, Messeros is a guy who missed a lot of the year. If he can step up and play better down the stretch, they have a shot. They lost their last game, but they had won 3 games prior to that. They're not that far out of a playoff spot, and they still have a lot of good players, but they lost Briere for an indeterminate amount of time, and the only hope for them is that Giroux gets absolutely in fuego, on fire, and just runs the power play like crazy. They go something like 30% power play success rate over the last 10, 12 games or so of the season, and that in turn he feeds all of those other players. Guys like Braden Shen, who were off to such a good start earlier in the year, he's really tailed off. So they need production from everyone to really have a shot here. I don't think that it's going to be a great year for the Flyers. I do think they'll be there in the last weekend of the season for the playoff spot. I just don't know if they'll get in. Well, there you go. That's a little look at the NHL playoff picture as we get closer now to some playoff hockey this month.